Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I know you've come from various places, and we'll hear about that in a minute, but this is a really special event, and I hope the first of many more to come.
So let's get going. AMMACH, first time.
Yeah, and the reason I've been telling one or two of you already why we're here is it feels like there is accumulation and aggregate energy, a critical mass of information over all these years from many people. We know a lot of it from America, particularly some from Australia, but we hear very little from England, the UK, and it's about time that we kind of help people understand, the public in general, what really is going on, and also for us to help in the researching side, perhaps what's going on and where it's going for humanity. Generally, you know, these things, ultimately, people often find they have a positive outcome, but in the meantime, a lot of people have a lot of difficulties and experiences that are challenging in the interim, and you know, we're very interested in having a look at what that's all about. So anyway, my background is just very briefly, I initially came from media, but also had a second hat in health and well-being. I trained as a therapist, working with energetic technique that worked with, I suppose, addressing mental and emotional negative triggers, and that often went into past life, and from that, quite a few ET experiences came through from various people unexpectedly, and from other different areas. So that really spurred me on, and I've also met people like Sixto Paz Wells, who's a contactee, which is a different experience to the abductee. So I want to have a look and explore all these different issues. Anyway, I want to introduce Miles and hopefully hear about his background.
My background in ufologies was a founding member of the Irish UFO Research Centre, and then we affiliated with before, and that's way back in the 70s and 80s, and when there was still UFOs and we had colour television then, and electric light, but only on a Thursday. But the important thing is we found a lot of quite important material, and we did a lot of very good original work in the Irish UFO Research Centre and published a magazine. And then I sidelined onto pirate radio because there was a major influence in the evolving social media in the Republic of Ireland, specifically the Republic of Ireland, and there's reasons for that. Major UFO waves from the 70s and 80s. So I've been tracking how this, somehow there's a wake-up call, which we call the intelligence transfer sequence, where people's awareness was being enhanced and switched on, and then what you did with it was your own kettle of fish. And there's a lot of people who went up to higher levels of consciousness, and so then I translated that through the natural state of affairs, and that ended up in Sky Television, and that was a light station. That's what Sky Television was fundamentally about, and that's what Radio Caroline was about. That's what all those stations were about. And most recently, I've left Sky Television because of discovery of major non-human activity with a very bad black energy signature, and a lot of creatures from the Matrix, shall we call them. And that came to me as a warning from a member of the BBC top executive who told me that last year. So the idea now is to wake things up, get the ball rolling, bring the whole level of abductees. The first part of this is anomalous mind management. We didn't want to put mind control in there.
That's right.
But that's the way that things are managed, because if our whole consciousness, the whole thing about 9/11 and everything else that we do, is really a war on consciousness and how we think. So that's one reason why we need to wake up, pay attention to it, and expose light on it. And if we expose light on it, the dark goes away. So essentially that's just to get the ball rolling.
So AMMACH is really essentially a research body, but we do intend to put this material that we that is disseminated from you around. We intend to log it and put it out there in various formats, but certainly what we're going to open the AMMACH files will be volume 1, 2, 3 as we go on through the months or years, and certainly we're going to get a documentary together from it, and whether it just goes YouTube or whether we get some funding from any other body, we're going to just explore, Miles and I'll be doing a lot of that, approaching different public bodies as well about
just to recap, I do the Bases series, which initially started with Barry King, and I mean essentially rather than recording material with a cassette tape recorder, I stuck a camera in front of somebody, and that's evolved into this mind control situation, and a lot of the stuff involving James Casbolt and Michael Prince, and that's my most recent bit of work. But the idea is that because I've been exposing this, an awful lot of people have written to me. Some people who can't be here today have been able to give us a very detailed history of how widespread this whole thing is within society and villages and the whole social build-up of the whole of our society. So that's very important. So by exposing this and letting people know, then others can come forward, and then it'll snowball hopefully, and other people will then become involved in the detailed history of how intricate this is in the fabric of our society over decades, if not centuries, is crucial.
And also AMMACH is fundamentally a support network as well. That's a very important aspect of it, because it's not often that you folks get a chance to meet each other, and I think that's really fantastically important. We've got a lot to say, and I think us connecting with our higher selves, whatever you want to call that higher energetic field, is very powerful indeed. And there's a reason that we're all here today together. So again, thank you for coming. And I'd just like to hand over to Dave Griffin from extrapolitics.org.uk.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, yeah, firstly I've just learned that it's called AMMACH. I've been calling it AMMACH the whole time since seeing the acronym, so AMMACH, we'll call it AMMACH. It's a bit of a softer sound, isn't it, that?
Mac is too much.
Mac, yeah, it is a bit, isn't it, Mac? We've got a John Mac, but not AMMACH. Okay, yeah, AMMACH. Yeah, I'm really pleased that Jan and Mars have got this together. This is really more their baby, and I'm pleased to see that the Midlands, the UK and the Midlands have got something actually going on the Contactee area. So I've been sort of doing the UK ex-politics thing since 2005, put on conferences, various other things, had a website going, spoken in Europe and other places about the ex-politics thing, which is a slightly different thing to the whole UFO thing, but still incorporates the contactee phenomena, puts it in a more of a wider context and a societal context and a political context, if you want to do that. So a little bit different from the UFO thing, but still one of my main interests, apart from file release and all the other stuff to do with the politics side of things and disclosure, which I tend to find a bit boring after a bit. I've actually always been driven by the contactee phenomena. That for me is where things are at. I don't often declare that sort of publicly to people, because it's trying to promote the whole extrapolitics thing. Once you mention the contactee thing, sometimes people, if you're trying to get people into this area, people have a certain issue about what contact is about, and so we're trying to educate people with, and the media, with to do with things like file releases by government and stuff. And that tends to draw people in, and then on top of that, you'll find that they gradually get more interested and will start to look at things like the contactee phenomena. And from my point of view, once you've read a few contactee accounts that you find authentic, you get bitten by a bug, and you find that there's some actually really crucial and really interesting information that you won't find in any other walk of life. You try and find the sort of data you get from contactee accounts anywhere else, it isn't there, and I find it fascinating. So really, the only other thing I wanted to say, apart from pleased that this has gone on, I'm interested in what's happening, especially on the Midlands-based level with all this, is that we're on our third conference at Leeds, the Leeds Ex-Politics Conference, held at Leeds University this August. The last two did quite well. This one I think is going to do even better on numbers and attraction and media interest-wise. But more importantly for this context today, is that the whole of Sunday is dedicated towards the contactee issue. And I pushed for this last year. Instead of having endless people talking about pilot sightings and all this stuff that we've seen before, I said let's try and do a contactee day. So we've got a whole day of people doing contactee experience, including some interesting people from the USA, a couple of really prominent UK-based contactees, and they're all giving their accounts of what's happened to them, and there should be another interesting little events that we're also planning for one of the other days on there. So if you're free for this August, have a look on the web, you'll find it if you just type in Ex-Politics in Leeds, and feel free to come up to the conference and contribute and meet everyone. It's usually quite a good event. So that's really all I got to say on that.
Thanks, David, for that. I know Dave has to...
When is the
August the 19th.
19th,
it's for the whole weekend, so from the Friday to quite a packed agenda from the Friday to the Sunday. Okay,
thanks. Dave has to skip off in a few minutes, so I'm going to let him do that. And do you want to do that now? Okay, thank you, young Dave.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Many of you have met me before, some of you haven't. My name's David Hodrin. I run the Birmingham UFO group. The group's been running since late 2007, and I wasn't the initial chairman of the group. But soon after the group began, I was one of the initial members. I was taken on as the official investigator because I saw I had a good drive and passion for the subject. I took on the running of the group in summer 2009 and have been investigating cases ever since. Especially interested in the contact side of things. I think that contactees are on the absolute forefront of the subject because other people having direct interaction, many of you, having direct interaction with the beings piloting these craft, which I think is one level up from just looking at the actual craft themselves. I work specifically with Rob Tudge at the back there. Good, take a bow, Rob. There we are. Rob's a hypnotherapist who helps us out with contact cases off his own back, which is great. And we regress contactees, and that forms part of the investigations. All the cases I've looked into, I write a detailed confidential report on, which gets posted on our website, which is bufog.com, bufog.com, and you can go on there and read about many other contact cases and indeed hundreds of straight-up UFO sightings as well. I deal with cases both from around the UK and abroad, just basically whatever comes the way of the group. And as well as taking cases to our own websites, I work with Richard Hall. Many of you may have been to his website, richplanet.net. He sends the cases he gets through the website to myself, and I go out and investigate those and write the reports for those as well. So a very busy boy.
And you have your chat room.
Yes, of course, yes. Birmingham UFO Group Contactee Support. It's a monthly online meeting which I've set up. It's great, absolutely, what you guys have done here with us meeting up physically. That's always one level better than just speaking online. But the online meeting I put together so that there wouldn't be any pressure, there wouldn't be any travel involved or anything, and also people can come into it from anywhere in the world. To be fair, most of the contactees we get in there are from the UK. But it's possible for anybody to log on, and that takes place once a month, usually the last Sunday of the month, and it's a couple of hours long, and it just gives people a chance to talk confidentially.
Has that restarted again?
Yes, yeah, it has. Yeah, we've had downtime on that while we've been sorting out stuff with the website. So essentially that's it. Great to be here today, and thank you both for inviting me along to the
I was just also going to say we've got a guest book page. If people want to leave comments, they can do, and it's also a way of getting in touch if they don't want to do Skyping. Hello.
Full address, please.
For the AMMACH, it's
for the Facebook then.
What is it?
Just AMMACH and the phone number.
Yeah,
which is
just search it on Facebook, you'll find it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're on there as well. Bufog's on there as well. So.
We haven't actually used Skype yet. Used that facility. That's just AMMACH 2011. That's the Skype address, and we're thinking about again a little bit similar to Dave's chat room, setting up a conference call for people to link in whenever we do that. But, and can I just ask people just bring this to people's mind or attention rather? It's just permission to use material. And in my media work, I've done a bit of extra work and stuff like that, and I always had to sign a release. It's called a release, and it just allows us to use the material, so we don't have any comeback from you guys at any time, because we're being absolutely upfront about what we want to do with this material. We want to put it out in the public domain, and it'll be your stories. It'll be us putting it together in your stories. But if you are not happy about that, there is just a little bit that says that you can opt out. Anyway, so the thing is that we're honouring all of that, but you just have to inform us, and we just do need to have your permission to use material. Otherwise, we can don't want to really fictionalise it. It would be a shame when there's anchoring it with the real NG of you, because that's what's going to get this out there. So anyway, I think we're in for really exciting times now. We've got tea and coffee coming, and before I think people, we've had a horrible time getting here, and I just think that we need a wee break before we. And sorry, David, you need to.
I was just going to ask how's it going to work then? The meeting generally in this one, are people going to come and discuss things, or just?
Well, I think what we'll do, we'll have people comfortable where they are, and we've got a mic there, and we can hand the mic, and we can film that. That's fine.
Hi, hello, my name is Simon. I'm 51 years of age, and I've been around these creatures for 51 years of my life. Or rather, these creatures have been around me. I didn't go seeking them, they came to find me. I don't know whether it's something that's run in the family. My mother used to work for MI5, and she worked on documents that dealt with craft that had been downed. Whether she had any contact or not, I really don't know. I've had two memories that have always been with me. One was in 1971 when I was 11 and a half years old, and I call that the day that changed my life. The memory that I'd always had, I can remember the UFO, and I can be remembered going up into the ship, but it was only the last 8 to 9 months that I've got my memories back, and I haven't had regression. I haven't got them back through dreams. It literally comes back through something I'll do at home. If I look out the window and see something, or I'll hear something and it'll spark it, and I'll go down and I'll write down and draw down very quickly what I've remembered. I've always considered up to November 2010 that I was an abductee, but end of November I got a memory back where I actually made a bargain with them. I actually made an agreement. So from that moment onwards, I don't consider myself an abductee, I consider myself a contactee. And one of the other memories I had, I was 3.5 years old, and a creature which I've always called my smoke man, and understand is actually called a shadow being, just literally walks right through the wall. Not a very nice thing to do to a 3.5-year-old. But since then I've had something like 500 separate memories that have come back, and I've left my memory book at home. Sorry, Dave. Or I've documented all my memories and my drawings. So it's something that I've learnt to live with. I've come through the very dark tunnel when you suddenly realise that something's going to come and get you. I don't know if anybody's read any books of Whitley Schreiber, but in the book, Schreiber talks about how he looks through wardrobes and he opens drawers, he looks under the bed. Now, I never had that, but during the time that I became self-aware, I was literally going and locking the front door 5 or 6 times, but I didn't know why I was doing it. Or if I want to go to the loo at night, I used to run from the bed to the loo and run back again because something was going to get me, but I didn't know what it was. But because the memories I've had have been largely positive, because I haven't been badly treated by them, I'm in a position where I feel that I'm able to talk and I can be quite strong about it. I have met people who do not have such interesting and pleasant memories, and for them it's much harder to speak. If you go to the bookshelves, and you buy a UFO book, everyone's an ambassador, aren't they, or this, that and the other, and you think, well, it's brilliant, but there are an awful lot of people who don't have good experiences, and they're not going to write books about it.
Can I just ask the type of beings you had interaction with, how you would describe them, or whether there was just one type or whether there were several?
It was Dave Hodrin who actually told me the name for the creatures. I described them to him. In England they're called mantid. In America they're called mantis, and Mary Rodwell at the Syrian Institute in Australia calls them manta. And I see all 3 sorts of mantid, the doctors, the pilots and the masters with the purple cloaks. Tall greys, the little greys, the 2 sorts of little grey, the original race of little grey, and then the little grey that's half biological and half computer. Reptilians, mostly the soldier types. They're the ones with the blacky green skin. Some crystal beings at very high density, high resolution. A whole range of creatures, but it is the mantids that come and get me. It's the mantids that hold my hand. It's the mantids that will sit and have conversations with me. When I first started my memories back, I would just get snippets of memory and snippets of conversation, but now I can recount whole sections of conversation, and it's very clear now what I'm supposed to do. I think everybody who's an abductee or a contactee thinks, well, why me? Well, what is it about? And some people never get the answer. I'm very fortunate they've made it clear to me what it's about. So because I've not been abused, I should think most people have been on the operating table, but that's not gratuitous violence. That's them just doing what they need to do. That's not designed to hurt me. But I haven't been hurt outside of that.
Have they communicated at all about this testing, this table, biological testing, and what that is to do with?
Well, yes, but what they've told me, first of all, they're looking for pollutants in my body to see how I've been affected by the changes in the atmosphere. Also, if there are diseases, they'll cure them, because they've told me that they're going to keep my body healthy. But I'm sure others will talk about it. It's all about the genetics. It's all about the DNA. That's what they're really interested in.
So are they interested in that as for the betterment of humanity, or are they creating another race? Are they, that we hear happens, hybrids term frequently used? Is that in your awareness?
I can only tell you the faction of extraterrestrials that deals with me. I know for a fact from what they've said there are different groups all signed up to different factions, and each faction will have its own way of doing it, but they've all signed up to the same agenda. Yes, I mean, I've had it explained to me in terms of, I don't like the word hybrid because it's a nasty, dirty word for a wonderful piece of life. But yes, I think that is the whole crux of the matter.
So is that, in essence, then their agenda, or is that a different element altogether? You see what I mean?
Well, you could ask 100 people, and I'm sure they would all give you different agendas. My own take on it is that is absolutely the agenda.
The agenda for the bettering of the human form.
No.
Am I right on that? No.
No,
Sorry.
So okay. Right, this is not your Earth. This is not your Earth. It never was, and it never will be. These bodies that we have here, these are not through a process of evolution, Charles Darwin on his beagle and the rest of it. Extraterrestrials can't survive in this dimension for very long, because we're a low dimension, third 3.3, when we've got time as well, I suppose. But a hybrid body, which is part from the Earth, an extraterrestrial body, can survive. And it's about the souls. It's about what you put into those bodies. Extraterrestrials want to learn to experience again. They have very little feelings. Not all of them. Some of them have feelings of sensations, but most don't have very well developed, have lost them. So if they can come to Earth, they can survive on Earth in what you call a hybrid body. But there won't be an invasion. The spaceships aren't going to land. The human race has got to evolve, develop, and move on. And I know this might go on YouTube, so I'll actually make a plea to all what I call the shepherds. Those are the people out there whose job will be to help humankind evolve, get them off the planet, get them off, move them off quickly, because you're holding up the agenda. Okay.
Thank you. Well, that was a dramatic note to finish on, and
Shall I pass across?
Yes. Would you mind? So perhaps whoever would like to take the mic, and I'm going to.
Hello, I'm Scott. I've been experiencing really since I was a child. One of my first memories, it was an orb of colour above my cot, and the colours just swirled and mingled into each other. I can remember crying out for my parents, and no one came. And to be quite honest, I don't remember much after that until a regression. I always wrote that off as a dream, but I had other experiences in between that dream and what I was told was called my primary recall experience, and that's really what I will talk about. Is it was Christmas 2008, and I'd been waiting all Christmas for something to come onto the television, and I knew it was starting at 8 o'clock. I had a terrible chest infection, to the point where I was unable to work, and when I was working, anything that exerted me at all, I was being sick. It was horrible. But I suffer with a chest infection yearly. 8 o'clock come, the thing started that I wanted to watch on television, and I've just stood up, grabbed the dog's lead, popped the dog's lead on, and I've taken the dog for a walk. But it sounds strange, but the walk that I took was not a walk that I would usually take. It was completely out of the way. I'd usually just walk around the park and up to some yellow bollards and walk back. But by the time there's a small pond at the park, I reached the pond, and instead of staying on the footpath, I ended up walking round. It's pitch black and it was icy. And then instead of joining the path again at the other side of the pond, I've just continued walking out towards the fields. And that is a walk I'd never take. I mean, maybe on a summer's day, a hot summer's day. But it was freezing cold, pitch black. There's no artificial lights. There was nothing to help us on my way. When I reached the fields, at the top of the allotments, it was like, the only way I can explain it is like someone literally flicked a switch in the field, and there was a light rolling, a white light. And I don't know why I thought it. I don't think I did think it. I think it was implanted. It was lampers hunting for rabbits, and I had to go into the field and talk to the hunters. So I've walked into the field, and I've got about halfway down. I thought, this just isn't right. There was a fear that overcame me. It was incredible. I've never felt fear like it. My dog actually rooted to the spot. We turned and we legged it up to the top of the field where I'd entered, and I felt much comfortable from up there. So I looked down, and in the tree by the side of the railway embankment was an orange orb, and it was just literally sat there. There was a bit of a fog, and the other side of the field there was it's a country road. Where it was a slight bit of fog, you could see the cars that was coming through from the hedgerow, where the light would reflect off of the fog. And as a car would come along, the orange orb would lift up, move over towards where the car was, and follow it over to the as the car would go over the bridge at the railway. It'd follow it, see it over there, and then it'd come back and it'd sit in the same spot. And I thought it was marvellous. Next thing, a white bar appeared from off of the embankment. It's hard to say how big it was because of the distance I was, and it's nothing that you can sort of. It's not the usual sort of thing that you'd see, so you can't sort of like judge the size of it. But I had a red light on either end of this white bar, and it flew up the field, which is about 600 metres long, and done a turn which is physically impossible, and then made its way back down to the end. At that point, I realised I've got to get my family. I've got to show my family this. So I ran home. Now, like I said, I had a chest infection, and I was being physically sick every time that I exerted myself. But I got back to my house in about 2-3 minutes. Totally impossible. No chest infection. The chest infection had gone. I grabbed my kids. I didn't even give them a chance to put their shoes on. In the van, so I threw them in the van. We drove back. My wife didn't want to come. We drove back out to the field, and as close as we could get, took them out. We didn't really see much. I mean, we were just literally staring at the fog. The fog was thickening up. So I said, why don't we go round to the road where I saw the orb and see if we can get the orb to come over. So we drove out there, gone over the bridge, and I'm flashing me lights. Nothing came over. So went back and parked up over by the barn. And out to the right-hand side, there was a red light in the field, and this is the field on the other side of the road. I thought at the time, this must be a Christmas light or something from a farmhouse. So until my son saw it split into two, and then rejoin. And while we sat there, I didn't see that, but my son did. We were all looking in different directions. It was so strange. There was nothing in the sky. Then all of a sudden, it was like a segment, like a portion of a craft that would illuminate, but that illumination would revolve around the entire craft, so you'd be able to get to see what the craft looked like, the shape of the craft, but not in its entirety. You would just see a section of it illuminate and revolve around. And I saw this 3 times. Each time the light had finished revolving round, it looked like underneath, if I can describe, a couple of circles with segments coming off the circles, and it just left that like an element, like you'd see with a light bulb as it slowly dimmed, and that's all that I was allowed to see. But you had to look to the side of it to see that. We see this 3 times, and each time it moved further over to the right. Anyway, one of my eldest son, he got a little bit frightened and wanted to go home, so I drove him back. Then me and my other 2 kids, we walked back out to the field with the dog. as we're walking out there, one of my sons says he sees legs off on the embankment. There's someone in the bushes, Dad. I was too scared to look. I'll admit, I was a bit of a coward, too scared to look. But we stood there, and we stood in this field for, I'd say it was about an hour, looking at nothing, and the fog was thickening. There was nothing there. Why we were stood there, looking at nothing, not communicating, not talking, I don't know. Youngest son then gets scared, so we take him home. This is where it gets strange. Me and my middle son, do you want to go out there again, son? Yeah. So we dive back in the van and we drive out to the barn. The fog by this time is so thick. We're there 5 minutes, gone a maximum of 20 minutes. Come home. When we had left, my wife and my eldest son were watching Mamma Mia. That was a Christmas present that we bought her. And by the time we got back, my youngest son was in bed, wife was in bed, and my son was halfway through a comedy special. We didn't put two and two together at the time. I then reported this as a sighting. Got in touch with Dave Hodrian, and Dave came over, and Dave was in the house when we actually found out exactly what it was that had happened. My wife was able to explain, and my son was able to explain, that we hadn't been gone for 20 minutes, and we hadn't taken the van. We had walked with the dog, and we'd been gone for over 2 hours.
Thanks, Scott. Sometimes it really is an overwhelming experience.
Sorry. After we found this out, the next few months was hell. It was absolute torture. Trying to assimilate this now into my reality was impossible. My mind took a hammering, and the experiences didn't stop. Nothing negative. There's no negativity whatsoever. The only negativity I found was from the reaction from friends, supposed to be best friends. I lost my business through trying to deal with this. Nearly lost my wife. It was just torture, to be quite honest with you. Believe it or not, I am coping now. But it's been hard. I agree with what Simon says. There is a soul level to this, and this is a thing that I think a lot of people have become completely detached from, is the fact that we aren't just physical beings. There's something inside every single one of us. And I was shown myself, shall we say, introduced to myself. Thank you, cheers. And it's been great getting to know myself through it. The experiences do continue, and what tends to happen, well, what happened with me afterwards was what's known as a sleep abduction, a sleep experience. I don't want to go into detail on that, but what I would like to say, because this is, other people are going to get to see it, and a lot of debunkers, namely R.J. McNally, has classed it as hypnopopic hallucinations. But I was returned with bruises, which I didn't do myself. If I'm paralysed, how can I bruise and mark and scratch myself? It's impossible. There's so many different levels to abduction, and whether it's just classed, whether a person just wants to say it's abduction or they want to call themselves a contactee, whatever, it's just a different label, and I think we've got to drop the labels. There's too many labels, and there's too many different labels, and that creates division. And let's just look at religion just to see what happens with that. And too much death, too much war. Forget the labels. It's all the same thing. So that's it. I mean, I've got more to say, but I'll pass it over. Thank you.
I'm not very good at talking.
I don't really know where to start, but I'll just try and keep it really short. But I could take what he was saying, I could take what Scott's saying. My experiences, I remember starting from the age of about 3, and these were the greys. There were 3 of them. One became my friend, who's still my friend, and I communicate with him, have done all my life. But I've only just accepted over the last 15 years, I've been pretty much in denial, best part of my life, which has caused me a lot of mental problems, depression, a whole bunch of stuff. Abduction, as you say, it's just a word. I know I'm taken. I've been taken since child. My children too. I will not go to that level with them, but see, I can't talk. I don't know how to speak it out, really. You can't keep this short. Yeah. You can't. I just don't know where to begin, because it's been all my life. So which part do I need to take? I've had so many things, and I'm just so used to it. The only way I can explain me is the way I work with them. They give me things. I see future. I do telepathic communication with people. I can read people's minds. Really bizarre things that are quite alarming, because I shouldn't know that stuff. I shouldn't be able to do that. As a child, I was able to levitate, able to move objects, which I was thrown out of class many times for messing about, making all my friends laugh. Anyway, moving on. When I was 9, I met a Palladian. He became my friend, but I don't see him anymore. But he told me my future, and everything he told me has all come true, and he told me how hard it was going to be, and that I would survive it, and I would be sane at the end of it by the time I reached 50, which I am now approaching this year. But I can't say it's been a good life at all. But I don't really communicate properly with humans, and I am a human, obviously, but I find I'm more up there than I am here, so I can't always talk on a physical level. I don't hold memory. I have a lot more lately. I have difficulties with memory, even if it was an hour ago or yesterday. I'm just so up there all the time. When I sleep, they often take me, but I know they're talking to me, and I remember snippets of things, and I'm no longer afraid of them. I spent many years moving away, kept moving, because of the denial. I didn't want to accept it for my children's sake, and I think even now, I still would like to believe I was in denial, that I'd rather believe I'm just mad, and accept that, but I can't, because they won't allow that. And when I've argued with them and I said, right, I'm not going to believe you, I'm not having this, I want the life everybody else has got and just leave me be, they then get quite forceful with me and very demanding. They don't hurt me, but it's like mental torture. They show me the future, and if I don't do this and I don't do that, then I have to, it's like I have to save certain people and help people, and that's what I do in my life. I am a medium, but I'm an advanced medium I can meet somebody within 2 minutes, I know all about their lives. It's not with everybody, certain people, and I've moved those people on, so I know I have to do that. But I don't consider myself special in any sort of way. I find myself quite an oddball, and physically I have no friends. These are my kin, and I can feel it in the room, that I do feel a sense of home here, even though there are some of you I don't feel that with, but it's irrelevant, because you're still nice people, so I do know the difference between good and bad, and who are going to help and who aren't, who are going to mock and who aren't. I got here, so I know I must obviously I've got to talk or say something. I was panicking, sitting here thinking, I can't talk, I don't know what to say. So yes, I'm given things for the future, and I'm placed, if that's a good word to put it.
Do you feel there's any of that information about the future that
Absolutely.
You could share?
Yes.
Would you mind?
It depends on what you mean.
Is there anything in our imminent future happening? I mean, there's so much happening on the planet. This is just what I'm thinking.
Okay.
And a lot of people think it's impulsed by not natural means. That is the earthquakes and the tsunamis.
No, they're not natural.
No,
they're all planted.
Well, that's what I believe.
Yeah, I've
personally,
known about the governments. I know all about that. They give me all that. But there are things they give me that I don't need to know, which just, it just makes me depressed when I think about it. If I can't do anything about it, which is a lot of things I can't.
Does that? I'm just wondering then, for you as an evolving soul, looking at that aspect as well, and also having to be embedded in a human body at this
that's hard
time frame. Yeah,
absolutely hard.
Yes, I find it hard.
I suffocate. I feel I'm suffocating all the time.
Yeah.
Even when I remember a time when I was 4, constantly I would sit on the end of my bed talking to the stars all the time, because I knew the star that I came from. I didn't know the name of it because I'm like 4 years old, but I used to talk to it, sit on the window ledge and say, take me home. And I knew I was in this skin and I didn't want to be. And I used to pinch it, pinch my arm, and just wanted to rip it off. And at times I would do a little bit of torture to myself. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just knew that I was put down here. And I didn't want to be here. They'd given me parents I didn't like, that were wicked and evil. And then progressing the rest of my life, I've just seen the evil and wickedness everywhere I walk and look. And I can't deal with it sometimes. Okay. So I go into deep manic pits of depression, but I do survive it. And I've survived much abuse in my life as well. And also, I've avoided death 3 times through them. Lifting me out. I walked in front of a car once and they just lifted me off and put me back onto the path. Yeah, I've had lots of experiences like that where they've stopped things from happening to me. There's some things that obviously are quite personal. That, where I was raped and beaten by a man who was going to knife me at knife point, but they stopped that. That was quite phenomenal, really, that one, because they got quite nasty. They threw him around the room, and you could see, and I was just paralysed, as you do when they take you. You get into that paralysis, and and you're aware of what's going on, but you don't always remember everything. And like I say, you had then, during the next few weeks, you'll have these snippets. It's like a little puzzle. It's like being planted with information, and all of a sudden, it all comes to light, and you know instantly what you've got to do, or who you've got to talk to. It's like I turned to Scott. When I first met Scott 2 years ago, I knew he was my kind. And I don't read books, never have done. I will not be influenced by them. I don't read newspapers. I don't watch anything that's bad, because it's bad enough just seeing it out there. But it was a few months ago I decided, was it a few weeks ago? A few weeks, yeah. I decided to join his site, and I really feel like quite at home there. I feel like I found some comfort for the first time in all my life. But I haven't even touched on a lot of things. I've moved many times because of it, trying to save my children from having to go through the same things. I've seen many UFOs above my house. One incident when my son was 2, he said that he told me the time and the day they were coming. 2-year-old getting rather excited, and my husband's very earthly. We split up. That was part of it, because he saw them. He just put it down to that, some sort of witch of some sort, or earth talk and rubbish, really. My son knew they were coming, and he was right on the time, and there was 8 lights above my house. We had missing time of 2 hours. So, many experiences. So I've lived with them all my life. I don't really know any different. But it's like I'm looking here now, none of this is real to me. This is just an illusion. And that's how I live my life. Nothing ever feels real. I just feel like I'm looking through the glass constantly. And I'm not really, you can't see what really is inside. But that is very strong,
You had
I keep very private.
Interaction with different species, different beings,
Well,
species, would you say?
Just a Greys and a Palladian. But there was a time where I don't remember a lot about it, but I have flickers of this, if you call it the lizard thing. I have this flash of that being in my room once, but then there was flashings of lights, and a Greys came in and he was gone. So I don't know whether there was a battle or something with each other to get one removed away from me. But all I know is the ones I work with are good and kind, and they're just out to help, to change things and to prepare us. And I am preparing, and I'm trying to get people around me in very subtle ways without putting it on them.
So what would you say for us, if it was just for us, what from their information that we should be doing to prepare, apart from...
You're doing it now.
We are doing it. Yes, I know that as well.
You have begun.
Yes.
And it's about time. Yeah. We so needed you for a long time. And you're now listening. So, yeah, like you say, it's the awakening.
Yeah. It sure
and it's
is.
time now, yeah.
Thank you.
My name is Brian, and like Sharon, I come from the southeast. I didn't want to say a bit more.
No, I didn't want to say, did I?
My first experience of anything that didn't seem to fit the normal way of life was, I imagine I was about 3 or 4. I don't know, because I know I was very young. It was one of my very first experiences and thoughts. And I can remember, I used to live in the East End of London in those days, and we had an outside toilet, and we had, instead of a kitchen, we had what was called a scullery. And out in the scullery, Mum had this like a mangle, so I'd turn the handle and whatever, and it was all folded up and made safe so I couldn't squash my fingers in it. But I used to play with this mangle at the age of 3 or 4, and I was driving a spaceship. I was flying a spaceship. Now, at that time, I wasn't even aware of televisions, and we didn't get a television until I was about 9. Because I'm going back when I was 3. I was born in 48, so there was no contact that I would have had with anything like that. But why I had that memory that it was a spaceship, it didn't even enter my mind that it was a car, because we didn't know what cars were in those days. No one had a car around our place, in those days. So that was one of my earliest memories. Later on, when I was in my teens, I was laying in bed, and I know you can dream that you're awake, but I know that I was awake. I was definitely awake. And I just had this, like Scott was saying, I had this terrible fear. It was an immense fear. And I knew that there was an entity behind me. But to be where it was, because my headboard was up against the outside wall of the house, whatever was standing behind me would have been partly embedded in that wall and part standing outside the upstairs outside of the house. Tremendous fear. I was rigid. I couldn't do anything. I was immobile. Then after a few minutes, everything went serene and calm, and I knew that it was okay. Everything was okay. I felt quite at ease with everything, so much so that I knew I didn't even have to turn around to see if it was safe. I knew I was safe, and I didn't need to look. And I just laid there, and I eventually went off to sleep. Around about that same time, probably within that it's a long time ago now, but it was probably within those same, within a couple of days of that experience. I remember standing, just leaning on my windowsill, looking out my window across the green, and by this time it wasn't in the East End of London when I say green, by the way. I was looking out across the green, and I was aware of a UFO, and it was, I suppose it must have been about 50 metres off the ground, quite big, and I just had this thought of it just leaving, as if I'd been returned. I wasn't aware of what had happened to me, but I just had this feeling that I'd been somewhere.
Okay, cut. We're just going to change tapes.
Okay.
Everybody wants to relax.
End of tape 1.
Yes, if anybody wants to get a drink of water.
Material that we that is disseminated from you around, we tend to log it and put it out there in various formats, but certainly what we're going to open the AMMACH files will be volume 1, 2, 3 as we go on through the months or years, and certainly we're going to get a documentary together from it, and whether it just goes YouTube or whether we get some funding from any other body, we're going to just explore, Miles and I'll be doing a lot of that, approaching different public bodies as well about
just to recap, I do the Bases series, which is initially started with Barry King, and I mean essentially rather than recording material with a cassette tape recorder, I stuck a camera in front of somebody, and that's evolved into this mind control situation, and a lot of the stuff involving James Casbolt and Michael Prince, and that's my most recent bit of work. But the idea is that because I've been exposing this, an awful lot of people have written to me. Some people who can't be here today have been able to give us a very detailed history of how widespread this whole thing is within society and villages and the whole social build-up of the whole of our society. So that's very important. So by exposing this and letting people know, then others can come forward, and then it'll snowball hopefully, and other people will then become involved in the detailed history of how intricate this is in the fabric of our.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I know you've come from various places, and we'll hear about that in a minute, but this is a really special event, and I hope the first of many more to come.
So let's get going. AMMACH, first time.
Yeah, and the reason I've been telling one or two of you already why we're here is it feels like there is accumulation and aggregate energy, a critical mass of information over all these years from many people. We know a lot of it from America, particularly some from Australia, but we hear very little from England, the UK, and it's about time that we kind of help people understand, the public in general, what really is going on, and also for us to help in the researching side, perhaps what's going on and where it's going for humanity. Generally, these things, ultimately, people often find they have a positive outcome, but in the meantime, a lot of people have a lot of difficulties and experiences that are challenging in the interim, and we're very interested in having a look at what that's all about. So anyway, my background just very briefly,
sequence where people's awareness was being enhanced and switched on, and then what you did with it was your own kettle of fish. And there's a lot of people who went up to higher levels of consciousness, and so then I translated that through the natural state of affairs, and that ended up in Sky Television, and that was a light station. That's what Sky Television was fundamentally about, and that's what Radio Caroline was about. That's what all those stations were about. And most recently, I've left Sky Television because of discovery of major non-human activity with a very bad black energy signature, and a lot of creatures from the Matrix, shall we call them. And that came to me as a warning from a member of the BBC top executive who told me that last year. So the idea now is to wake things up, get the ball rolling, bring the whole level of abductees. The first part of this is anomalous mind management. We didn't want to put mind control in there.
That's right.
But that's the way that things are managed, because if our whole consciousness, the whole thing about 9/11 and everything else that we do, is really a war on consciousness and how we think. So that's one reason why we need to wake up, pay attention to it, and expose light on it. And if we expose light on it, the dark goes away. So essentially that's just to get the ball rolling.
So AMMACH is really essentially a research body, but we do intend to put this material. Initially came from media, but also had a second hat in health and well-being. I trained as a therapist working with energetic technique that worked with I suppose addressing mental and emotional negative triggers, and that often went into past life, and from that quite a few ET experiences came through from various people unexpectedly, and from other different areas. So that really spurred me on, and I've also met people like Sixto Paz Wells, who's a contactee, which is a different experience to the abductee. So I want to have a look and explore all these different issues. Anyway, I want to introduce Miles and hopefully hear about his background.
My background in ufologies was a founding member of the Irish UFO Research Centre, and then we affiliated with before, and that's way back in the 70s and 80s. And when there was still UFOs and we had colour television then, and electric light, but only on a Thursday. But the important thing is we found a lot of quite important material, and we did a lot of very good original work in the Irish UFO Research Centre and published a magazine. And then I sidelined onto pirate radio because there was a major influence in the evolving social media in the Republic of Ireland, specifically the Republic of Ireland, and there's reasons for that. Major UFO waves from the 70s and 80s. So I've been tracking how this somehow there's a wake-up call, which we call the intelligence transfer society, over decades, if not centuries, is crucial.
And also AMMACH is fundamentally a support network as well. That's a very important aspect of it, because it's not often that you folks get a chance to meet each other, and I think that's really fantastically important. We've got a lot to say, and I think us connecting with our higher selves, whatever you want to call that higher energetic field, is very powerful indeed. And there's a reason that we're all here today together. So again, thank you for coming. And I'd just like to hand over to Dave Griffin from extrapolitics.org.uk.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, yeah, firstly I've just learned that it's called AMMACH. I've been calling it AMMACH the whole time since it's an acronym, so AMMACH, we'll call it AMMACH. It's a bit of a softer sound, isn't it, that?
Mac is too much.
Mac, yeah, it is a bit, isn't it, Mac? We've got John Mac, but not AMMACH. Okay, yeah, AMMACH. Yeah, I'm really pleased that Jan and Miles have got this together. This is really more their baby, and I'm pleased to see that the Midlands, the UK and the Midlands have got something actually going on the contactee area. So I've been sort of doing the UK ex-politics thing since 2005, put on conferences, various other things, had a website going, spoken in Europe and other places about the ex-politics thing, which is a slightly different thing to the whole UFO thing, but still incorporates the contactee phenomena, puts it in a more of a wider context and a societal context and a political